Well, a budget tomorrow. One thing's clear, money seems no obstacle. And as has become customary, you don't have to worry about tomorrow night. It's all leaked anyway. It seems as though every hand that's out will be accommodated. There's debt everywhere, but the spending goes on. Josh Frydenberg says the best way to repair the budget is to repair the economy, which is not a bad thought. Well, at times like these, you need a very solid dose of common sense. Terry McCrann, one of the nation's most respected economic commentators, joins me. Terry, thank you for your time.
Good evening, Alan.
You're the man of common sense. Look, when the Prime Minister addressed the nation in the second week of March last year, he had a $17.6 billion plan to deal with the pandemic. Then we put the economy into a coma, and on rough calculations, the $17.6 billion has become hundreds of billions, and we're heading towards $1 trillion in debt. What do you make of that?
Well, Alan, what a difference a virus makes, and 12 months. I mean, you go back to the beginning of all this. I mean, we could spend the whole rest of the hour talking about the things that we were supposed to be trying to achieve, both with the virus and with the economy back then, and they all were ditched. And what we've ended up with is, in the budget sense, this, as you say, put it very, very simply, money doesn't matter. No. You can just spend and spend and spend. Yeah. And because there's sort of no reckoning, interest rates are at very low levels, and the Reserve Bank will buy the debt that you issue anyway. Yeah. What does it matter? Let's just spend another 10 billion. Let's spend another 50 billion.
That's on. And how do you retire this debt without growing the economy?
Well, we're never going to retire this debt, Alan. I mean, as you said, we are headed for $1 trillion. Whether the budget tomorrow will give us that figure, that was the figure in the budget update in December. The numbers now look better, quote unquote. We're getting slightly smaller deficits. So we mightn't actually look like we're going to hit that $1 trillion in the 4 years. But we will get there because there is no process of unwinding these big deficits. No. And as you say, the only way to have a strong economy and to have a strong budget and to at least get back to budget balance is by having a strongly growing economy. And you only get a strongly growing economy with real productivity, real production out there in the private sector, not governments handing out tens of billions of dollars.
Absolutely. I mean, God. I mean, the Treasurer says he wants a 4 in front of unemployment, currently at 5.6%. Now, if your borders are shut and you can't bring international students, skilled workers and tourists, how do you fill the jobs that are out there? I mean, are you going to have to take on people who haven't worked for years? There's going to be $1 billion to train and reskill the workforce. 17 to 24-year-olds are unemployed. I mean, what the hell, eh?
I think, Alan, we could start by requiring those who are unemployed to actually put their hands up to work.
Correct.
That we're talking about 5.5% officially unemployed, but the real unemployment number is a lot higher than that. People have just left the workforce, are happy to get the dole if they're on the numbers, but otherwise just not to work. And we've got all these shortages across the country. I mean, you could easily put 1,000 people into jobs at Port Douglas or at Noosa.
I know.
Or in the country.
See, Terry, I was looking at figures today. 1,008 chefs and cooks are needed in Queensland alone, 256 kitchen hands, 398 bar attendants, 497 waiters. One restaurateur said the best fix would be to get 1,200 to 1,500 international students back into Cairns. I mean, it's one thing to subsidise apprenticeships in areas of skills shortage, but that's a long-term solution.
Well, exactly, Alan. And those 1,200 students that were filling those jobs in the past, actually, 12,000 or more, was a soft option. And it was really allowing people that could be filling those jobs living in Australia from doing it and requiring them to do it, rather than saying, well, we can get the cheap labour from overseas and from backpackers or from students.
Terry, I know you're sitting down, so I don't want you to fall off your chair. But one of the things that Anthony Albanese said in his budget reply speech last year was that he would subsidise, no means test, 90% of all childcare costs. Now, I understand that tomorrow night the government is saying for the second and third child under 5, the government will subsidise 95% of the childcare costs. And we'll just see the childcare costs go up and up. What do you make of that?
Well, our world has been flipped upside down, hasn't it, Alan?
Yep.
That you've got
Yep.
the current government, supposedly the government of free enterprise and low taxation, outbidding the Labor Party
That's it.
on the left. If they can spend 10 billion, we can spend 20 billion.
Anything you can do, I can do better.
It's extraordinary.
It is. I mean, 120,000 single parents are going to be eligible, they told us, to shift from long-term renting to owning a home with as little as 2% deposit. Now, even a $400,000 home, Terry, and I don't know where you find that, would need an $8,000 deposit. What?
Well, the way this is proposed, Alan, it's basically going to end up as a subsidy from the government to anybody that actually qualifies for these schemes and actually is able to borrow the money, because the borrower will have to put in 2% of the amount of the loan, and they say up to about $8,000. But the taxpayer is going to basically guarantee another 18% to make up to 20%.
That's it.
And by guarantee, at the end of the day, that it's going to be a direct payment by the taxpayer to those borrowers, because they'll never be able to make up that money themselves.
Now, we've got record income, tax income from company tax, record income from personal tax. Will China keep paying us $100 billion a year for iron ore?
Well, all this is built exactly on that. Back in the December update, the deficit was going to be $200 billion this year. The government is going to announce a deficit of probably something like $150 to $160 billion tomorrow night. And that will all primarily be a factor of China paying us that extraordinary prices and buying so much of our iron ore. As you say, in total, $100 billion, of which roughly 30% goes to Canberra.
Yes.
Now, it's an extraordinary situation. We're talking about going to war with China, and yet China is the basis of our prosperity as it stands today.
We're selling them the stuff so that they can go to war. Now, what about the virus? I mean, will the virus work? How does the economy sit if we keep locking everything down and people can't leave and can't arrive in Australia? That's a variable, isn't it?
Well, indeed, Alan. And the question now is not so much how the virus works, but the vaccine. I mean, clearly they're working in the short term. The Prime Minister has signalled that we're going to have to get boosters in 6 months or 9 months. Is that going to be the prelude to opening up the economy, to actually getting back to normality? I don't know. But clearly, I mean, you have to ask yourself, we're living in a sort of a fiscal fantasy land in relation to the budget, where a $150 billion deficit looks like a great success. I mean, it's just extraordinary.
We've lost our way. Now, coming back to something you and I have talked about now for goodness knows how many years, what about all the green projects that there'll be? Hundreds of millions of dollars tomorrow night to subsidise renewable energy.
I know, and we've got every year that passes, we get a new fantasy. And the new fantasy is now that hydrogen is somehow going to be the fuel of the future. The bottom line, Alan, as we've discussed time and again, and we're not talking about rocket science, we're talking about basic reality. We need electricity, which is reliable, which is cheap, and which is plentiful. And the only way you get that is from coal-fired power or nuclear power, maybe with gas-fired power stations as a backup. All the other things are just silly frivolities. They're fantasies. They're not going to provide the basis for a successful economy.
As you and I have called it, an economic suicide note. Just a quick one before you go. We do have to minister to the elderly and provide dignity in old age. I noticed that they're talking about a $10 billion package over 4 years for the aged care sector. That won't be enough. There'll be a very significant outpouring of anger if that's the amount that's provided.
Well, exactly. I agree with that, Alan. But, I mean, obviously after what happened in Victoria last year, which exposed the shame of our aged care facilities, we need to go down that path. But again, this budget is going to be a mix of things that we have to spend money on, and things that we're wasting money on,
i.e. renewable energy. Great to talk to you, Mr. McCrann. I suspect you're going to have a bad night tomorrow night.
Well, I don't think I'm going to be surprised, Alan.
No, I don't think surprised. All the things we've argued against. Good to talk to you, Terry. Thank you for your time. Thank you. There he is, the great Terry McCrann.